Hello and welcome to today's episode. Yesterday at 5 pm, that is on September 20th, our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi gave an address to the nation. Now, such addresses by a Prime Minister are usually meant to project strength and vision, but yesterday's speech of Mr. Modi sounded very different. Behind the polished words, one could sense a quiet admission that the BJP's economic policies over the last decade have simply not worked. Why do I say this? Because Modi announced policies yesterday that looked suspiciously like the very ideas he once mocked when they came from the Congress party. And when a ruling party starts copying the opposition, that's not reform, it's surrender. In yesterday's speech, Modi looked and sounded nothing like the fiery orator of 2014 or even the confident leader of 2019. His delivery was dull and monotonic, his words were repetitive and uninspiring, and the content itself felt thin, tired, and disconnected from the audience. Instead of commanding the nation's attention, he seemed to repel it. What emerged was not the image of a strong leader, but of a waning, surrendering prime minister weighed down by his own failures. The biggest headline yesterday in Modi's speech was regarding the GST. Now, back in 2017, the BJP forced a five slab GST system 0, 5, 12, 18, and 28%. It was supposed to simplify taxation, but in reality, it created chaos. Shopkeepers and small manufacturers drowned in compliance, inspectors thrived, and corruption flourished. At the same time, Rahul Gandhi and Congress at that time had argued for just two slabs. Modi had dismissed that time this idea as impractical. And now in 2025, Modi proudly announces a return of two GST slabs as if he is doing a great favor to the people of India. This is not bold leadership, it's a U turn, a silent acceptance that Congress was right and the BJP was wrong. After 8 wasted years, the government has simply circled back. The second thing that Modi talked about yesterday was regarding the MSMEs, the medium and small micro enterprises, the backbone of India's economy. Now, according to the government data, MSMEs contribute around 30% of India's gross value added, GVA. 30.5% in 2018-19, 30% in 22-23. Even in the pandemic year, they made up of around 27.3% of the gross value added. They are central to India's growth. Now, don't confuse the value add with the GDP. These are two different things. This only shows the strength of the MSMEs in India and how much they are actually contributing to the economy. But what has BJP done? In 2016, demonetization suddenly wiped out cash flows. MSMEs which run on cash were devastated. In 2018, GST chaos delivered another blow to them. Now, some people argue that registrations of MSMEs are on the rise. As of financial year 24, 4.77 crore MSMEs are registered under the Udyam, with 2.49 crore added just last year. But numbers on paper don't mean health. Many are struggling under Inspector Raj, endless paperwork, and corruption. So when Modi now says he wants MSMEs to grow, it rings hollow. This is like breaking someone's legs and then offering them new shoes. I will now touch upon the false Bachat Utsav narrative which Modi had started yesterday. He came up with this slogan of Bachat Utsav, a supposed festival of savings. Modi painted a rosy picture of rising household savings and consumer strengths. But the data tells us a very different story. According to CareEdge ratings, household savings have fell to 18.1% of our GDP in the financial year 24, the third consecutive year of decline, a consistent decline of savings of all Indians. A decade ago, savings were closer to 22% of our GDP. Instead of saving, families are now dipping into reserves just to survive. At the same time, household liabilities have risen to 6.2% of GDP, nearly double from 10 years ago. More Indians are borrowing to buy essentials and not luxuries. The other point of concern is that defaults by our middle class are rising. Loans overdue by more than 90 days have touched 3.6% in March 2025, up from 3.3% a year ago. Credit card defaults alone have jumped 28% last year, crossing 6,742 crore in unpaid dues. And small ticket loans under rupees 10,000, especially in rural and tier 3 towns, are showing the highest delinquency rates. So tell me, where is the Utsav? The reality is a crisis. Families are tightening belts and not really celebrating. You will see the effect of this in the Dussehra Diwali purchases this year. I will now touch upon inflation, which is a pain for every Indian today. Now, if you look at the official CPI numbers, the government will say things look stable. Retail inflation averaged 4.6 in the financial year 24-25, one of the lowest since 2018-19. In March 2025, it was as low as 3.34%. In July 2025, food inflation was even negative, minus 1.76 year on year, with rural India at minus 1.74 and urban at minus 1.9%. Headline CPI inflation that month was 1.55, with rural at 1.18 and urban at 2.05. But then statistics can mislead, because for the ordinary Indian, prices remain painfully high. Over the last 12 to 15 months, the cost of essentials have shot up sharply. Milk, vegetables, cereals, staples, cooking oils, and spices are up nearly 20% from last year or 15 months ago. Petrol, diesel, and rent keep creeping up. Add to that the school fees of the children and the household services. And the monthly budget of families has been stretched to a breaking point. So, whatever the official numbers may claim, the truth is that the common man is under severe stress. The so called low inflation looks very different when you are standing at a grocery counter or paying school fees. That makes the official figures not only misleading but deeply suspect. The disconnect is this: inflation may look low in charts, but real incomes are stagnant. So even small increases feel crushing for the middle class and the poor. Life doesn't become any cheaper, it's becoming harder. And then Modi talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat. According to me, a story that has gone stale. Now let's revisit another grand slogan, Atmanirbhar Bharat. When it was launched, it promised self-reliance, buy Indian, build Indian, be Indian. The emotional appeal was powerful. But after years of drumbeat, the slogan is stale. Why is that? Because the hypocrisy is obvious. The Prime Minister urges Indians to support local products, yet he himself travels in imported luxury cars. He flies in foreign manufactured aircraft. Imports of electronics, defense hardware, and critical technology are all still on the rise. Yes, some progress has been made in manufacturing, that has happened, but India is still heavily dependent on imports. Trade deficits are widening. In fact, India's dependence on imports from China has sharply increased over the past few years, undermining the very idea of self reliance. In financial year 24-25, India imported Chinese merchandise worth US dollars 113.45 billion, up about 11.5% from the previous year. That time it was 101.73 billion in 2023. Now, to put that in a perspective, back in 2020, in 2013-14, when Manmohan Singh's UPA 2 was at the last leg, India's total imports from China were about $58.2 billion, just about half the figure of 24-25. In 23-24, India's total merchandise imports amounted to 677 billion, out of which 101 came from China, which is around 15%. And in 2013-14, the total imports were 450.9 billion, and imports from China accounted just about 12.9%, a little under 13%. So yes, while Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat are often repeated, the dollars tell a very different story. The scale of imports has nearly doubled in a decade, which raises serious questions about how independent India really is today in many sectors: electronics, machinery, chemicals, and consumer goods. So, what exactly is Atmanirbhar Bharat today? It's a hollow story. Ordinary Indians are told to buy Indian while the leader rides in a German car and waves from an American jet. That's not self reliance, that's hypocrisy. So now let's connect the dots. Modi's GST rollback to two slabs is an admission that the BJP's complicated five slab system failed, and that Congress's simpler approach was right all along. His promises to MSMEs ignored that his own policies crippled them in 2016 and 2018, even as they contribute 30% of our GDP. His Bharat Utsav claim collapses under data showing savings down to 18.1% of GDP, defaults rising to 3.6, and credit card NPAs are up 28%. His inflation story hides the truth that while official CPI is low, real incomes are stagnant and the middle class feels crushed. His Atmanirbhar Bharat slogan is stale and hollow, exposed by his own dependence on foreign luxuries. Even the RBI admits that more than 50% of new NPAs in retail banking now come from unsecured loans, personal education, and microfinance. That's where the real stress is building up. So, what we heard yesterday was not a vision of a great leader. It was not even a courageous speech. It was not a new roadmap. So, what was it? It was an admission. It was an admission of failure. So, in conclusion, I'll just say at 5 p.m. yesterday, the Prime Minister stood before the nation not as a leader of change, but a man forced to retreat, a man borrowing the opposition's ideas while denying the pain his policies have been causing. 11 years in power, and the BJP is back to Congress's GST model. 11 years in power, and the MSMEs are still shackled. 11 years in power, and families are saving less and borrowing more and defaulting faster. 11 years in power, and the slogans have gone stale. The people of India deserve honesty. They deserve relief. They deserve policies that work. Because behind the shiny slogan, the harsh truth remains. India deserved better.